שלום לכולם, ברוכים הבאים, בבקשה בואו שבו, and please turn off your cell phones.
Good evening. Please be seated. Professor Peretz-Levi, President of the Technion. Professor Wayne Kaplan, the VP for Research. Ms. Ron Armon, Chair of the Armon Foundation. Mr. Avi Blasberger was supposed to be here, but I see that he is not here. We also have with us Mr. Donald James, who's the NASA Associate Administrator for Education. Dear Technion and ISU faculty, staff, and students, dear guests, it is an honor to have you here on occasion of Dr. Buzz Aldrin's Gerald Soffen Memorial Lecture. My name is Pini Gurfel, and I'm the head of the Usher Space Research Institute at the Technion and the chair of the local organizing committee of SSP16. It is a tremendous effort. It has been a tremendous effort to host here SSP16 on campus. We've made this effort because we believe that the inspiration and value of space is of great importance to education, greater than any amount of dollars. And speaking of dollars, I must acknowledge our sponsors and supporters, in particular El Al Airlines, that funded the travel of Dr. Aldrin, and Offer Lapid for facilitating this. A whole generation is growing up which has been attracted to the disciplines of science and engineering by the romance of space. Thus, the Technion and ISU have joined forces to educate the next generation of space visionaries. I would like to quote Gene Roddenberry, the creator of the Star Trek television series. Why our space program? Why indeed did we trouble to look past the next mountain? Our prime obligation to ourselves is to make the unknown known. We are on a journey to keep an appointment with whatever we are. Each year ISU honors the memory of one of its greatest supporters, Dr. Gerald Soffen, with a lecture featuring a prominent visionary in the space sector. Few are more visionary than ISU's Chancellor and Apollo 11 moonwalker, Dr. Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin earned his Doctorate of Science in Astronautics at MIT and wrote his thesis on Manned Orbital Rendezvous. He was selected by NASA in 1963 into the third group of astronauts. He also pioneered underwater training as a substitute for zero-gravity flights to simulate spacewalking. In 1966, on the Gemini 12 orbital mission, Buzz set an EVA record for his spacewalk. On July 20th, 1969, Buzz and Neil Armstrong made their historic Apollo 11 moonwalk, becoming the first two humans to set foot on another world. They spent 21 hours on the lunar surface and returned with 46 pounds of moon rocks. An estimated 600 million people watched them on TV, the world's largest TV audience at that time. Since retiring from NASA, Buzz has remained a proponent of human space exploration. He devised a master plan for missions to Mars known as the Aldrin Mars Cycler and has received 3 US patents for his schematics of a modular space station, star booster reusable rockets, and multi-crew modules for space flight. He founded Starcraft Boosters Incorporated, a rocket design company, and Buzz Aldrin's Share Space Foundation, a nonprofit devoted to addressing science literacy for children by igniting their passion for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Dr. Aldrin is an author of 9 books, including the New York Times best-selling autobiography entitled Magnificent Desolation. He continues to inspire today's youth with his illustrated children's books, Reaching for the Moon, Look to the Stars, and recently released Welcome to Mars. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Buzz Aldrin, Chancellor of the ISU.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you ever so much. I'm really so honored to be here, so many smiling faces. I've spoken at the ISU programs many times. Well, not so many. And the institution has always been very important for me. It doesn't work as well as I thought it would. Improvise. Chancellor, wow, that is a big deal. Maybe it's because I'm getting on years and they'll be looking for somebody else. No, you won't. No, you won't. I'm going to be around a long time. And many of you know my son Andy. It's good to have someone with a lot of academic credentials, speaks Russian, policy man, corporation man. I'm just a fighter pilot and a spaceman. But it is a very proud moment for me to be here, my family. And I'm told that Andy comes by here, and I see talent that I've seen before at Houston, and I think that we can do some things in common. Maybe you can help solve some problems, and maybe I can help inspire you a little bit. So Andy right now is in charge of the Aldrin Space Institute at Florida Tech, East Coast, sort of in the central. And we hope to focus our attention on not a real broad subject like everything about space, everything about moon or Mars, on a specific method of starting and having a total program that will ensure permanent habitation of Mars. And I call this program Cycling Pathways to Mars, CEM. And I believe that there is a lot of potential for collaborative work between this ASI, Aldrin Space Institute, and ISU. Many people don't know this, but I applied twice for the astronaut program. And I wasn't a test pilot. Somehow, that just isn't what I wanted to do. And turns out when you get specific, in the US Air Force, there isn't room for more than one Chuck Yeager. So Ed White was picked in the class 62, good friend of mine. I wasn't, but I was a year later. So I went to, I was at MIT when we were conversing, and then it says here that I'm a scientist. Scientists discover things. Engineers make them work. I learned that sort of from my father. And I would like to think that some of the theories that I implemented or applied, developed Orbital Rendezvous. And the particular application of lunar orbit rendezvous, instead of trying to do a good bit of it that put things together in Earth orbit, they tried to say it was safer than this risky. One of the big factors was that we could do it with one Saturn V, they needed two. But Lunar Orbit Rendezvous, or LOR, was probably the most important decision that led to the success of the Apollo program. I'm really about the luckiest guy to have come along when I did. My mother was born the year the Wright brothers flew. My dad was an early aviation pioneer. And I got to fly a little bit in a jet in war, combat, and a little more education. I got to fly and do a spacewalk and train for it in my favorite sport of scuba diving, underwater. The first astronaut to train underwater. And of course, the way things worked out, Neil and I and Mike Collins were in the right place. Neil and I were in the backup crew for Apollo 8, the first flight that went to the moon, and that was an exciting one to be a part of. And if they succeeded with testing the lander in Earth orbit and then in lunar orbit, then we would be given a chance to land. And that was a milestone of transformation for the world, for exploration. It was a big deal. But I tell you, there's a much bigger deal coming. And people ask me what it was like to be so far away, 3.5 days. And the first words were not historic. Neil had that opportunity. But my words were magnificent desolation. It was magnificent for an achievement of humanity to be able to go somewhere else that we've been dreaming about, looking up at the moon. But it was the most desolate I could imagine. You couldn't really create here on Earth the contrast of the horizon moving away, the black sky, no air, and because the sun was bright, there weren't stars, but there was the Earth up there. So it was desolate, and I still think that describing things as a contrast between this and this is somewhere in between. So with Mike Collins, who stayed in lunar orbit, and we're on the surface, we always felt connected back to Earth through communications. And there were 400,000 people of all different occupations, engineers, flight controllers. And we were in the hearts and minds of 1 billion people back on Earth. And when we ran around Earth, we got the distinct feeling that the people we visited felt like they had been a part of the mission. And there was a sign here or there, "We did it." So the world welcomed us back as heroes, but we understood that they weren't just cheering for three guys. It was what we represented, a nation and the world coming together. We had accomplished the impossible. And the true value of Apollo is the amazing story of innovation and teamwork that overcame many obstacles to reach the moon. And I feel so privileged to have played a part in that historic event. And today I consider myself sort of a global statesman for space. I'm looking for a pointer, because that's coming in a few pages. In the travels around the world, I think I need to remind people just what it means to have a strong, vibrant, cutting-edge space agenda for the 21st century. And I've dedicated pretty much the last 30 years of my life to Mars and the technical systems needed to be able to get there and to maintain permanent presence. Thank you. But I've come to realize that it's not just rocket fuel that'll get us there. It's the human spirit, the country, the people behind you, the world behind different countries working together. Coalition is the word I've looked for a lot of different ones. And it's not just organization, it's a coalition. And it's the human mind which will have to solve the scientific challenges that we have to resolve to get there. Now, last August, we formalized and established the Buzz Aldrin Space Institute at the Florida Institute of Technology, FIT. It won't quite ever replace MIT, but Florida Tech, maybe approach Caltech. Purdue, yeah, they got a lot of good stuff there too. So this new institute is not only an academic organization dedicated to the proposition of establishing and maintaining a permanent human presence on Mars. There's no greater endeavor that humanity will undertake for generations to come than to create a permanent presence on another planet in the solar system, to occupy Mars. More than occupy, which means somebody's already always there. So before you bring anybody back, you have to have somebody else there. So there's visit, back, empty. Occupy, some level, but if you're bringing the people back, it depends on how many you can get there and how many you can bring back as to what the maximum level is liable to be. But our objective, my objective, is to establish permanence. And the sooner we do that, the cheaper it's going to be. And you don't disappoint people by bringing them back when they've trained And 2 missions later, those people will receive the sense of achievement for their nation and for the world. And I think maybe even more important than that, it's the guy or girl in our country, a president, who makes the commitment, the permanence, will be remembered for many centuries to come. And no other task can unite the nations of the world the way this could and should. We don't want to compete. That's wasteful. Not just cooperate, but assist other nations. And my plan proposes that by 2040, we'll have the first people living on Mars, and from that point on, we'll always have people at Mars. By 2050, none of you guys are going to be around then either. Maybe 50 people. And we will be focusing on what I think the cycling pathway to Mars is. And it's a pathway that starts out in low Earth orbit, lunar orbit, achieves things there. And then 2 cyclers are needed every other opportunity to transport people to Mars. The lunar cycler starts out in Earth orbit. It's got to get to the moon. If the timing is right, it can become an Earth-Moon cycler for 2 or 3 months. Why not? And when it's through doing its job, and maybe the other countries have assisted in taking over, it can become an Earth-Moon cycler again. Maybe. We'll see how all these things work out and how, but the most important thing is to try and break through this relationship with China and to make that work right as soon as possible. And this is what we'll be focusing on, not learning the language, but through the research and the plan and working with headquarters, working with other space agencies, and we'll make use of the concept of cycling pathways to Mars. And that proposed architecture establishes pathways, progressive missions, low Earth orbit, cislunar space, asteroids to Phobos, the moon of Mars, and eventually landings and permanence. Now, let me show you a little bit about what I mean. You know which way a clock goes? Clockwise. Everything else goes counterclockwise. I don't know why the Swiss had it wrong somehow. That's up to you guys to come up with. It's just a pretty simple answer. But this goes counterclockwise. Somewhere around 2020 here, 2025, 2030, 35, 40, and beyond. And so this part is dealing with activities in low Earth orbit and the moon. And then we start before 2030 and landing objects equally on Mars, and then bringing them together. Just for fun, I've thrown in, there's something not quite right, a flyby of Venus for all you ladies out there. Men are from Mars, ladies are from Venus. But we get the cycler going back here, a red one, A, and a blue one. And we have a dry run, and then this is the first time we send a crew. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's put an inflatable here, Bigelow inflatable, another one, and then we can have some other HAB modules, perhaps in lunar vicinity. And this is a space HAB. We put one in Earth orbit, combine these together, and we have a LEO cycler. We put these together, and we have a lunar cycler. We've been looking at getting the ice, separating it from the regolith, the soil, electrolyzing the water, hydrogen and oxygen, and pretty soon we've got liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. This is pretty complicated, and there are a lot of different ways of working the rough spots. During the last year, I became absolutely convinced that we don't want the depot out in space. That's where everyone else wants it. I can't tell you for sure why. Maybe it's because we got a spacecraft somewhere in the vicinity of the moon or the Earth, and it needs refueling. Now, when you're in your car, you drive along, the gas gauge looks low, you drive to the gas station, you fill it up, and you go back to it. If the depot is on the surface, that means you've got to land, get fueled up, and then lift off again. That may be why, or there's sunlight all the time in space, and we've got energy, and if you do things on the surface, you don't have that same energy. But we do have nuclear energy. We're going to need it eventually at Mars, so the sooner we can put it on the moon, the more useful it's going to be. You won't really see here just how efficient that is. We've got people in orbit, and I've arranged, not the way it was 2 years ago at Purdue, but last year I gave them a few hints. And the orbit I want to be in at the moon is similar to the orbit that the moon of Mars is in, a lot closer than these libration points, and with fuel on the surface. So if we have commercial crew going to the space station, going to a second commercial in low Earth orbit, then going to a lunar cycler in lunar orbit, we can send commercial crew to 60 miles, just like Apollo. It goes over the landing site. Now, while they're getting there, an unmanned lander lifts off, joins up with a propulsion stage, refueled by Earth propellant. It's reusable. It takes the lander to the same orbit that the crew is in. The crew gets in the lander, they land, crew gets out, refuel it with ascent fuel and descent fuel. And we take up a crew, uses the spacecraft that the first crew reusable landers. When we got about 3 or 4 of them, no nation, no agency needs a Saturn V. The landers are already there, they're reusable. You just send up commercial crew. Anybody here know why we didn't think of that before? I didn't think of it before. You start playing around and things sort of fall out as you're trying to design a base on the moon that's good for Mars, but you'll land it on the moon. The US designs it, the other nations build it and land it. Different places. We bring it together, make the connection, because that's the way we're going to do it at Mars. Hopefully the same nations that build modules for the moon, land them, they'll do that at Mars also. So there are a few niceties that are in here. If you can see this layout of a base, it's got a triangle in the center, and at each of the 3 modules that make up the triangle, they form another triangle. 1, 2, 3. You got a line of 4 in a row, 4 in a row, 4 in a row. That means we can have terminal guidance. We put a tower in the center and it can do, once we get it close to the line of approach, it can get signals to the rover that it's on. I didn't think of that, it just came out. It was a good design. Buckminster Fuller looked at it. Hey, wow, look at, you can do this with it. It's called dumb luck. I hope you have a lot of good dumb luck in what you're doing. So we're going to put these modules up here, and we're going to assemble them from the Earth before a crew gets to Phobos. Now we're going to have 2 landers and 2 people in each one. Now there are 4 people landers. So the 4 people will go to Phobos and the other lander will be at the surface. So now we have 4 people at Phobos. If they succeed in putting this together, making the final assemblies, they get to land just before another 2 landers come. One replaces the 4 that are on Phobos and the other lander. So now we have 8 people on the surface here. And we experimented with 3 landers. So we'll use 3 landers over here, and we'll eventually get it up to 20 people. Now, you notice that we have 2 landers and then 3 landers. There's a propulsion stage for each one of them, and they're tied together. So one propulsion stage could fail, and the other 2 can take the 3 landers if they're far enough along, or they can come back. With 3 landers, you've got triple redundancy. Anybody care to guess what design reference mission number 5 out of NASA? It's been around, been modified a little bit, quite a bit. Redundancy, 0. You gotta make, you may have a launch window, But you're going to give it a try right at the beginning of the launch fit. And you got an ignition, you got a trajectory, and you need to get 100%. 95%, you don't get to Mars, and you're not coming back to Earth. 90%, 85, 80, it's somewhere below 80%. And you're probably in the 2-year orbit of the Earth, and your consumables may not last that long. What do we do at the moon? Free return trajectory. We launched from Earth. We were on a trajectory that would swing by the moon and come back. There is no free return at Mars. And there's no rescue that can get you when you're in an orbit of the sun. I really felt sorry for myself and for everybody when I discovered that that was the case. I figured everybody's going to get nervous because we got a cycler coming by and we got to catch up with it, and they're going to get, oh, that's difficult to do. So I said, I got to have redundancy. How I did it, I wasn't sure. But if I could take 2 spacecraft there, a lander, anybody here from Lockheed? And an Orion. Then when I get to Mars, I just could not find a use for Orion. Come back? Yeah, you could. But we've been testing the Mars lander and its entry. We've been testing it at Earth. We've been testing it for landing on the moon. We can bring a Mars lander back to Earth if we need to. There are ways that we, of course, can bring people back. It costs a good bit more, and there are a lot of other arguments. The 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th one is the most important. We came from the Garden of Eden or the trees, and we watched things roll down the hill. We made wheels. We got the oxen to pull a cart. We got a steam engine. We got tracks. We got trains. Gasoline engine. We don't need tracks anymore. Ooh, around. Gasoline engine. We put a propeller on it. Now we're up in the air. We shove the gas out the back end, and we go higher, faster, and further. So rockets, of course, they became very practical, very well, useful. The V-2 rocket, had they implemented that sooner, the outcome of World War II could have been quite different. The Germans did that. Why didn't America? Sputnik. The Russians did that. Why not America? We needed a think tank to look at the different things that we did good and not so good. Let's move on. A LEO cycler. Now, the cycler between Earth and Mars has to last for 30 years, maybe 35, 40, with small changes. So we don't want moving parts. Now, how we do that is a little magic. But anyway, we have a very large fixed solar array, and from the bottoms of it, we deploy radiators. Now, these 4 boxes fold up for launch. In orbit, they come down. 90 degrees, 90 degrees apart. The solar array deploys in quadrants. I am very proud of what is here. It's not complete, but it's 2 cube octahedrons. Very neat structure for support. There's sort of one at the bottom and one at the top. Let's look at now this is large volume Bigelow 330s. They don't really have to be there. We could put a European Alania design part here in Earth orbit. We could put more. Next, please. Lunar cycler. Now we're going to have smaller ones here, and we're looking at the bottom side of the solar array, and you can see a little bit more about the structure. It's not quite complete in here. If you've got nothing to do, get the glue gun out and play around with toothpicks. It's a lot of fun. Now, we don't need as many people at the moon, but we're going to maybe have 2 or maybe 3. Now, on the surface, I showed you where we have triangles of modules. You need 2 ports 60 degrees apart, then 120 and 2 ports. For redundancy and other uses, you might just as well have 6 all the way around. They'll come in handy. And that is going to be true of the ones in space too. So I can have 2 landers out like this. The lander docks here. That's the ceiling. This is the floor. We point it at the sun. Roll stabilized, certain roll rate. Guess what? Got a little incy bit of artificial gravity. It's called convenience. Instead of this floating around, I can put it there and it'll stay there. Next, please. Okay, now, here is Mars. Here's Phobos going around at a certain geometric distance. Now, here's the moon. This is going around at the same geometric distance. To be actually correct, the diameter is the height of the orbit above. In other words, it's 3 moon radii, because this is about 2.76. So we've got a situation at the moon where we can have people assemble things, very much like what they will do at Mars. If you look at this long enough, you can begin to see that we can put commercial crew to this orbit. This is the cycler orbit, and we can put commercial crew to this orbit. And we send a lander, and they land. We refuel, go back up. That's pretty neat. Year and a half, 2 years ago at Purdue, we didn't do it that way. But after you look at something for a while, you begin to think, and there are other, these things can be in different planes that give you certain advantages. That's a student project. It increases the launch windows. For a while, I thought that you had to have the refueling in this orbit that would come from the surface. But if you put the lander here, he goes down, refuels, comes back up again. We don't need the refueling here. So if we've got one cycler and a relay here, 120 degrees, and here, we could have another country build the same thing here, another country build the same thing here. Now, instead of all being in the same plane, they can be 60 degrees. So we've got a little variety. It opens up some launch windows. Next one. All right, back to the script. Got to be the proudest moment for an American to be standing there and saluting the flag on the moon. And Neil and I have said that from our exceptional nation and the whole world behind us, we came in peace for all mankind. We Americans do these things. Think big, act on our dreams, then look back and bring the world along with us. These words were written for CPAC, Conservative Political Action Committee, the Republican. Trump was supposed to be there, but Fox fooled us and scheduled a debate. But this is for the ears and thoughts of the leader. So, in this room, let me say, this is the time to venture outward again, much further in space, bringing humanity out to Mars, making history there, as we have here. Listen closely. The next president who appeals to the higher angels and takes us closer to the heavenly body we call Mars will not only make history, he will be long remembered as a pioneer for mankind to reach, to comprehend, to settle Mars. And if not now, when? And if not us, who? I appeal to you to take up the challenge and bring us all along, from the wild blue yonder, with giant leaps, to this waiting island in the blackness of space. This is the time. This is our time. This is your time. As President Kennedy said, and others have, we have a rendezvous with destiny. Now, in concluding, let me just leave you with 5 words that I've been, I didn't originate them. Arnold Schwarzenegger did. Total Recall was the movie. See, when I get puzzled, I look for help. I got to tell them what I'm looking for, and then the help comes up here. Whether you can read it or not, it says, get your ass to Mars. And that's what the t-shirts are for. And these 5 words I've been telling everyone on planet Earth and those beyond. Let's go for it. Your supporter and dedicated warrior for peace. Moon, Mars, Guy, Buzz. Thank you very much. We didn't talk about what comes next. Thank you ever so much. If you've got questions, ask John Connolly. He's got the answers. If he can't, we'll replace him with somebody else. Thank you very much. Where do I go now? This way.